Jesus Christ has total power over Mott. That statement may seem strange, but I want to give it a clear meaning in this podcast. My mother is 101 years old. Most people do not reach that age. She is an extraordinary lady of German descent, and God has blessed her with many years. Her large family cares for her as her needs grow. As we age, our bodies do not work as well as before. Living a long life has both good and bad sides. It's tough to bury children you raised, and Mom has done this twice. Also, it can be difficult when your health declines and when friends pass away, leaving you with fewer people who remember you. My mother has gone through this many times. For years I visited her and she told me she had lost another friend. Sometimes it happened every week. Although the deaths of her friends have slowed down, I think this is because fewer of her old friends are left. Solomon wrote about his frustrations with death in Ecclesiastes. He had more chances and ways than all people to enjoy life and have whatever he wanted. However, he saw that none of this mattered because death eventually took away his achievements. It does not matter how we live, whether we live well or poorly, wisely or foolishly, death comes for everyone. Everyone will die, and there is no way to stop it. Most of us expect to live longer than our parents or grandparents. I doubt I will reach 100 like my mother, but generally, we are eager to learn about the latest medical advancements, diets, and exercise programs to help us. We hope to extend our lives and delay death. Some even say we want to cheat death. Is this feeling like being trapped by the fear of death? Maybe. Well, I'm not saying these thoughts and actions come from wrong desires. I have used medical advances to extend my life. The Bible tells us that life and health are gifts from God. Death is a serious enemy. Still, death will come knocking someday. So how can we completely free ourselves from the fear of death? Well, we cannot escape death on our own. No matter how good new medicines, diets, or personal choices are, death will still come. In short, the answer is found in the title of John Owen's classic book. Its title, The Death of Death in the Death of Christ. When Christ died, he defeated the power of death, meaning death no longer wins. The sting of death is removed because of Jesus' resurrection. This truth must be buried deep inside our soul and made into a presupposition that answers all of life. Do you believe that? Christ destroyed death is something easy for Christians agree with and get excited about. We read this in the Bible, see it in Christian books, sing about it, and share it with others. However, the real test comes when death arrives. When we face this enemy directly, and we know our time has come, and there is nowhere to hide from it, this is when we need to know the truth like never before. The truth is that Jesus Christ has conquered death. So when we look at death, whether healthy or not, we can say, I believe my Lord beat death. Now I may grieve and struggle, but not like those who have no hope. So I ask, where do you place your hope? We can answer this best when we know who our God is. So, who is God? Who is it that you most trust in death? Fear of death is a normal and common feeling for all of us across all cultures. However, did you know that God controls everyone's and everything's existence? In chapters 17 through 19 of 1 Kings, Ahab, who became influenced by his wife Jezebel, became a follower of Bel, the storm god, who was believed to provide the rain essential for life and farming. This misguided belief caused God's people to perceive Yahweh as inadequate. The story begins with the prophet Elijah proclaiming a drought as a message from Yahweh. There will be no dew or rain for these years, except by my word, he said. The main characters include Elijah, a widow, and the gods Bel and Mott. Bel is recognized as the god of life, while Mott is the god of death. In Canaanite mythology, Mott repeatedly defeats Bel, symbolizing that death has more power than life when the two go head-to-head. Now the story is that Elijah stayed in a room at a widow's house. Just before this time in the story, death had threatened the widow's household. There was no rain, and a famine had taken over the land. A famine usually means death, so we can imagine how serious it was. That's ironic, is it not? I mean that God's people turned to worship Bel, the Canaanite god of rain and fertility, and did so because of fearing death, yet now they were without rain and starving. Later, the widow's son becomes ill and dies, which left her feeling powerlessness against death. Death often arrives unexpectedly, and the widow had no power in her to stop the threats of starvation and illness facing her son. Many people feel this way when death arrives. We want to help, we want to do something, but often we feel powerless to do anything. So death comes, and death brings questions, doesn't it? Maybe the top question is why? No matter how often we see or hear about death, we still hate it. We cannot accept it. Death never seems fair. When I hear about someone dying, even if I don't know them, I feel sad and angry about death again. We often wonder or ask over and over, why? Death changes everything, doesn't it? After death, we often forget things. Things that were important one moment we forget about, at least for a while. Sometimes death helps us focus on what really matters in life. The threat of death can make us forget small worries, and that can be a good thing. But sometimes we forget the good things, like the good that God has already done for us. The grieving woman quickly forgot the blessings she had received from Elijah. This brings us to question 2. We often will ask, is it something I have done? This is a common reaction to death. What bad have I done that caused this? When the woman wondered about this, we learned a lot about her. She had a profound understanding of God. She believed that her son's death was under God's control and possibly a punishment for sin. Unlike the Canaanites, who practiced dualism or polytheism, worshiping a god of life and a god of death, she recognized that Elijah's God was Lord over all things, including death. Her questions seemed to stem from her perception of unfairness, and she was earnestly appealing to God to make things right. Elijah took the widow's small son to the upper room, a place that he could pray and get alone with God in his prayers. Both he and the widow felt that God had either passively allowed or was somehow responsible for the child's death. Elijah too longed for God to make things right. When he got to her in the upper room, Elijah made a heartfelt plea, asking God to restore the child's life. His bold request was significant since there was no record of anyone returning from the dead in Israel. Clearly, he had confidence in God's control over life and death. All of the questions that come from facing death, the key question will always be, who is God? Or who is the real God? Bel was viewed as a god often defeated by death, but the God of the Bible was ready to show his superiority. Elijah prayed for a child's life to return, asking for something extraordinary. The Lord listened to Elijah and responded. The life of the child came into him again, and he revived. This demonstrated God's incredible power not only to create and take life, but also to resurrect it. Yahweh had defeated Mot, the Canaanite god of death. Elijah brought the revived child to his mother, saying, "See, your son lives." Imagine the widow's joy as she realized that her son had been restored. Elijah wanted her to see the truth. The living God gives life and conquers death. Who determines the time of your death? When we think about death, we often consider the views of both elderly people and young children. This brings up an important question. Is it better to die young, or is it better to live to old age? There are issues with all answers. Death can occur suddenly, as in the case of a heart attack, suicide, a car accident, or drowning. These unexpected events often leave loved ones feeling lost, breathless, and unprepared. In contrast, some illnesses, such as various forms of cancer, diabetes, or Alzheimer's disease, lead to a prolonged and painful decline. This extended process allows both the patient and their loved ones to witness and often anticipate each painful step toward death. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul states, "Therefore, Just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sinned. Romans 5:12 ESV. Here we learn that death entered the world as a consequence of sin. It is therefore often depicted as an enemy, a punishment, and a deviation from God's original intention for creation. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 26. Yet, can there be moments when we consider death as a means of escape? Let's clarify. This is not to endorse suicide, an act of desperation where individuals attempt to take control of their own demise. Instead, I refer to the perspective of a believer who trusts that God is sovereign over all things and who, in the face of suffering, longs to be united with Him in heaven. For example, my mother, who has reached an advanced age, frequently shares her struggles with this. She often asks, "Why does God still have me here? Why doesn't He just take me home?" I do not believe for a moment that my mother harbors suicidal thoughts or a desire for death. Rather, I think she has reflected deeply on her faith. Her assurance of a future in heaven leads her to contemplate the idea that, amid increased suffering and pain, it is only natural for an older person to desire to be with Jesus. My sister Patty spent a considerable time in the hospital before she passed away. In the early months, she expressed a longing to return home to her family. However, in her final weeks, her desire transformed into a yearning to go home to heaven. I believe that in this way, God prepared Patty for death, making it a means of escape from her suffering. I have observed that this readiness for death is not uncommon. Many people find themselves prepared to embrace the transition when their time arrives, having placed their faith in the eternal promise of God. Philippians 1:21-23. When is the best time to die? I'm not sure anyone can truly answer that question. Each person leads a different life, and as cliché as it may sound, God has a plan for each of us. I often tell my mother, when she wonders why she is still alive, that although I don't know the reason, we both understand there is a purpose for her to be here. In the end, we must leave our lives and our time of death in God's hands, who knows best. Interestingly, centuries ago, Jesus encountered another Canaanite woman in Tyre and Sidon. Acknowledging her great faith, Jesus healed her child, Matthew 15:28. He also revived a widow's son, the daughter of Jairus, and his friend Lazarus. So, why should we not fear death? Well, because like the widow, we can trust God's word. Christians do not need fortune tellers, Ouija boards, spiritist, or card readings to learn about the future or what happens after death. We do not rely solely on new drugs, diets, or self-discipline. God has given us everything we need to know in the Bible. We know Christ is alive, so we understand that death cannot claim us until death becomes part of God's plan for us. Because I live, ye shall live also. John 14:19. What happened with Elijah signifies the promise of life for all who believe in Jesus through his death and resurrection. Do you believe in Jesus? If so, then mortality or death has no power over your God, who will raise you up to be with him.
Still here, not knowing when my time will end. The older I get, the more I must depend. Family from Kansas, gone to the other side. Most friends and old loved ones, to their fate they abide. Some entered eternal glory, a joy we'll share. Yet others are lost, darkness their snare. They say my memory is slipping away, as aches and fatigue join me each day. I take pills to keep the cancer at bay, yet some treasures remain that never will sway. The moments with Frank, the blessings of Kent, my faith in the Lord, the comfort within. The song that you gave me forever will ring. In my heart, it's a melody, a gift that you bring. Naomi and Patty, dear ones now gone, still here, I wait my day with hope ever strong. My large family surrounds me with care they provide, and my prayers rise always for my needs and my guide. Father, I thank you for your kindness so true, for blessings too great that I can't count to, for promises whispered from your sacred word. My hope is in Jesus, forever assured.